Hello and welcome to Crossing Borders with Nathan Lustig, where I have conversations with entrepreneurs doing business across borders and the people who support them, with a focus on those with some connection to Latin America. This episode is brought to you by latamlist.com, a daily English language news source that covers Latin American tech news. If you like this podcast, I think you'll like latamlist.com. My guest today is Emmanuel Oquendo, co-founder of Brainhi, an automated AI receptionist for doctors and dentists, which was the first Puerto Rican company to get into YCombinator. We cover Emmanuel's childhood growing up in Puerto Rico, his desire to solve big problems, what it was like growing up on the island, and how he decided to move to Boston to work at the MIT Media Lab, but then move back to Puerto Rico to start his business. We talk about Emmanuel's advice for getting into YCombinator, how to best take advantage of the program, and how he's been able to leverage the advantages of being in Puerto Rico while talking through the perceived downsides of the valley. I got to know Emmanuel at Parallel 18, Puerto Rico's equity-free accelerator, started by Sebastian Vidal, and have been privileged to get to work with Emmanuel and his co-founder Israel as investors via Magma Partners. Be sure to listen to the Brainhi story during and after Hurricane Maria. After listening to their story, I can't see how you would have any excuses to not be able to grow your business. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Hello, Emmanuel. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being willing to do it.
Hi, Nate. How are you? I'm so excited to be part of this podcast.
Yeah, I'm glad we could do it. So where are you in the world today?
I am in San Juan, Puerto Rico, currently.
Awesome. And what are you doing in Puerto Rico?
I'm starting Brainhi. Brainhi is an automated receptionist for doctor and dentist offices.
And tell me a little bit more about Brainhi today. How many people are using it? What are some of the services that dentists really like?
Sure. Yeah. So we launched close to a year ago, I think a little bit over a year. And right now, over 200 offices. That makes it about 250 doctors are using it across the world at this point. Puerto Rico, the US, we have pilots in Spain, Argentina. And really the main issue that we're solving today is that we have found that 25% in average of all the calls that are received by doctor and dentist offices are missed. And most of those callers will not leave a voicemail. About 20% of those callers leave a voicemail today. So what we have found is that by using artificial intelligence, we can get those missed calls and turn it into appointments. And that's really the basics of what we are building in Brainhi today. That's really how we're landing in the offices, because we believe that in the future, front desk communications between doctor and dentist offices and patients will be automated using software, and we plan to be that software. So we're landing in the offices by answering missed calls, but the idea is to slowly but surely take over of all the front desk communications of the offices.
Awesome. So I want to jump back to you before digging into Brainhi more a little in a bit here. So where are you from originally?
I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm from a little town in Puerto Rico called Vega Baja in the north of Puerto Rico. It's like 30 minutes away from San Juan.
And did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Or was that something that came up later in life?
Oh, I think that I knew it. I just didn't know what entrepreneurship meant. So when I was in high school, one thing in Puerto Rico is that entrepreneurship is very new, still very new. So even though I could identify myself as an entrepreneur when I was really young in high school, middle school, nobody told me that was an actual option for me. So I described, when somebody asked me about what I wanted to do when I was older, I said that I wanted to solve problems, important problems in the world. So people told me also you should be an engineer. So that basically I decided to join the University of Puerto Rico at MIOS as a mechanical engineer. The reason why I became a mechanical engineer is that people told me that was like the most general engineering. So that's a good example of how I just was interested in solving problems. I wasn't too interested in something in particular. So I was just passionate about important problems at that point.
Do you remember problems that you thought were interesting to solve in high school, or that you were trying to solve in high school or in university?
Yeah, so the first I remember myself thinking about energy as one of the most interesting problems for us in Puerto Rico. At that point, there was like zero solar energy or any type of renewable energy being used, really. So it was a very interesting problem. However, as soon as I got to the university, I got very interested in solving brain drain in Puerto Rico. So about I don't have the exact numbers, but just uh, by talking with my friends, I know that 75% of all the engineers that study in Puerto Rico leave the island as soon as they get their bachelor's degree. So that was a problem that I was very interested in solving since I got to university, and it's a problem that I think is one of the roots of all the challenges that our country is facing today.
So people have probably heard about some of the challenges. Maybe they know Puerto Rico from maybe stopping over at a cruise and then the hurricane. What
Right.
was it like growing up in Puerto Rico? And tell me a little bit more about the universities and the talent that gets produced out of Puerto Rico.
Sure. Yeah. So growing up in Puerto Rico is in a very interesting position because we have access to a lot of resources thanks to our relationship with the United States. However, there's a strong patriotism in the country. I myself identify as somebody that's very proud of being from Puerto Rico and our own identity. And I think that most of the Puerto Ricans are like that, very proud people of coming from Puerto Rico. And a lot of people just know that Puerto Rico for the last 20 years or really forever we've been having a lot of struggles. Puerto Ricans tend to support each other a lot when somebody tries to build something from scratch, and so that's when you ask me about Puerto Rico, I just think about a group of people that hasn't have it too easy on their lives and just try to support and each other through the struggles. Yeah, so that's Puerto Rico to me, and really we Brainhi is product of that Puerto Rico. We've been through basically all possible entrepreneurial programs in Puerto Rico that so a lot of people has helped us have helped us in the process of building Brainhi.
And one of the things that was really interesting to me when I first went to Puerto Rico with Parallel 18, and that's where we first met, was the quality of education, and especially in engineering from Puerto Rican universities,
Right.
and the prevalence of Puerto Ricans that maybe get their bachelor's degree in Puerto Rico and then go on to study at top universities in mainland US. So can you tell me a little bit about what that looks like, and what is that journey like for Puerto Ricans that study undergrad and then maybe go to the US or maybe do their undergrad in the US?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. As soon as you get to the university in Maya West, the first year you can go to a job fair where you get hundreds of companies from really mainly from the US that are trying to recruit you. So from very early in my career, I learned that all of the opportunities that the university gives us, and it's really is amazing, right? To just as a freshman get the opportunity to talk with companies like Google, which I know that is not as easy maybe in other countries outside of the US. So I think we have in that way we as engineers have great opportunities. However, there's a flip side to that. A lot of people in the university tend to define success as how many internships you got in these big companies like Google, Facebook, or just universities like MIT, because of the same problem of not knowing a lot about entrepreneurship. That's just not an option. So they define success as how many internships you have in these other places around the world, or if you have an job offer for outside Puerto Rico, when there's a lot of things to do in inside the country, entrepreneurship being one of those. So yeah, it's there's the good and the bad in terms of the opportunities that we're given as engineers.
So speaking of internships and time spent in the US, you made the decision to spend a little bit of time outside of Puerto Rico. Can you talk about that decision and what you did?
Yeah, I was, as a regular engineer, I was one of those engineers that got really great opportunities outside Puerto Rico. I worked for companies like Verizon during the summer, internships and research internships in MIT, actually in the MIT Media Lab, which is a really awesome lab in MIT. Yeah, so I got the exposure to artificial intelligence, which is basically what I'm building today in MIT. So it's definitely a big part of what we're building today.
And what was it like going from Puerto Rico to the MIT Media Lab and being an intern there?
Yeah, it was an eye opener. From one part, I think that many times us the Latinos tend to underestimate ourselves. And what I mean by this is that when I got there, I met a lot of like geniuses and people that were very intelligent. But it was, when I came back to the University of Maya West, I saw people that was equally as resourceful and intelligent in different ways. So it was a big eye opener in terms of knowing that the place where I come from and where other Latinos come from, we're equally as intelligent and resourceful that the top places in the US. So it was a big opener in that sense. However, I learned a lot about the importance of resources. And in MIT it was way easier to, if you wanted to do a research in 3D printing, you could request a 3D printer and you'll get it in a few weeks. And in Puerto Rico, you will have to do, a campaign. And so it's just a difference of access to resources. That's the main difference between a top university and, a university that has a university like Puerto Rico. But in terms of the human capital, it's everywhere. The human capital is everywhere because at this point, software has democratized education. So that was something that I was able to see since me personally, I was able to compete and with the engineering talent that is there, and other Puerto Ricans and people from all around the world did the same.
One of our big investment theses in Magma is that talent is more or less evenly distributed, but opportunity isn't. And that sort of sounds like
Exactly.
what your experience was with going to MIT. So, what advice would you give to other people, either in Puerto Rico, maybe in the US, that aren't seeing the opportunity, or in Latin America, about finding those first opportunities or cracks into the system, and then taking advantage of them once you're there?
Right. Yeah. I think that one thing to recognize is that as a Latino, in many ways you're an underdog, and I don't see that as a bad thing. I experienced that eventually in the accelerators and things like that, and when talking with investors. As Latino, there's not a lot of success stories just yet in terms of the world of entrepreneurship and in other ways. So I think that you just need to recognize that, and you need to recognize that and just make that part of your day life, and just embrace it. Just embrace that you come from a place that probably you don't have a lot of opportunities at other places, but you just can work harder. And I think that the reason why Brainhi is being successful at this point is that we're outworking everybody, and I'm very confident about that. So I think just the outworking people and using things that you learn in your different countries, I think that that's a big differentiator that I had, the Brainhi has, and that any Latino can really exploit because of the place they come from.
So, talking about opportunity, you, as a Puerto Rican, can live anywhere in the US if you want to.
Yeah.
And so you had the opportunity to stay and pursue something either in MIT or in New York, Silicon Valley, but you decided to go back to Puerto Rico and do an internship there and then start your company. What made you decide to go back?
Yeah, so we first of all, there's definitely a lot of passion for solving the contributing to solving the challenges in Puerto Rico in any way I can. So that was really the first thing in my mind. I just didn't want to leave behind a country that needs help, and that's something that I identify with that, and the whole Brain High team also identifies with them with that. However, there's big advantages to operating from Puerto Rico as a company. And the first one is that I'm not the only one that is really passionate about Puerto Rico. There's hundreds of Puerto Ricans that are out there in the U.S. that want to come back to their country. They left their families behind. They left their girlfriends, boyfriends in Puerto Rico. So they have important parts of their lives here in Puerto Rico. So what I've discovered is that if I'm able to match the quality of work, maybe not match exactly the salaries, but get as high as I can and match the quality of work, I can tap into that market that is across the US. And we've already done that. And we've gathered talent from places like Airbnb. Now we just recruited an engineer from Lyft. And it's just people that see added value in being in Puerto Rico, because Puerto Ricans have that same mission of, and many Puerto Ricans leave the island because they want to give back to the island in different ways. They want to have money so they can help their families. We have found that passion that I had personally is something that is across all Puerto Ricans basically, and we can tap into that talent, and that's a big differentiator when recruiting, which is really hard, especially for engineers.
Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something. Amir from Todoist, who was on the podcast, is a completely remote company, and he likes to talk about how you shouldn't have to leave home to work on the world's most interesting problems.
Exactly.
And I think that as one big trend is going to be remote work, but the second big trend is that people who are extremely talented and maybe went to the US or went somewhere in Europe are going to be able to go back home and work on amazing high level problems from home and not have to give it up. And in the case of the engineers you're recruiting from Silicon Valley in New York and are coming back home, can you talk a bit about their how their quality of life might change when they move back to Puerto Rico?
That's a very interesting question. I think that there's some ups and there's some good and things and bad things about places like Silicon Valley. I think that a very positive thing about Silicon Valley that I got to experience again is resources, but resources in the form of actual money from investors, but also just mentors and people that are really really good. So in Silicon Valley you have access to really interesting people that have done it already. So that access is very important. And maybe in Puerto Rico, somebody that is not as experienced here in Puerto Rico will be one of the most experienced persons. So in terms of the level of and of talent and just experience in general in entrepreneurship and technology is a little bit different. So if you're looking to get a lot of mentors, maybe it's different. However, the thing is that if you're already a Puerto Rican that have been 5 years away from, maybe in Silicon Valley or New York, you already have a strong network of people that you can access from Puerto Rico. So you're not leaving that behind. You're actually, it's really a step up in terms of now you have all these people that can help you out. And now in a startup like Brainhi, you're able to actually provide that level of impact that you're looking for. So yeah, I think that in the flip side, even though you don't have access to a lot of mentors or resources in Puerto Rico, if you already have that, it's not as big of a deal. And actually, way more important is that now you can have an impact in an actual startup that where you can have voice and vote.
So, getting back to Brainhi, why did you decide to start Brainhi instead of some other idea when you decided to start your own business?
Yeah, so a very interesting thing is that I've received this question before from entrepreneurs that are starting out, and a lot of entrepreneurs ask me, when was the aha moment? The interesting thing is that at least from my experience, is more of an evolution than an aha moment. In my case, I learned about AI in when I was, places like MIT and things like that. I came back and I just was very interested in the capabilities of the technology. So it was basically a new platform, a new technology. So new questions could be asked now that AI was a very relevant topic. And so I was one of those engineers that was very curious about the technology. So I just started to build chatbots. I just started to make some money by customizing AI chatbots to different people. We got to work, for example, with Ada Monzon. Ada Monzon is a very famous meteorologist here in Puerto Rico, and I got to build a chatbot that processed millions of, well, not actually only me, but me and my co-founder Israel. We got to build this chatbot that processed millions of conversations during Hurricane Maria, for example, that happened in Puerto Rico. So what I'm saying is that it just started by me exploring the technology and just listening to my customers. So in that case, I work with every vertical. I work with retail companies, restaurants. We work with everyone. The thing about doctors is that they were a little bit more interested in the technology, and I think looking back, I think it was because it's one of the most understaffed businesses in the US and Puerto Rico. These people have maybe one or two staff members, but they're doing the job of five people. And I think that any relief that they could have to just automate more of their processes and just focus on the high impact stuff was very important. And we felt that's from scratch when we were able to build this first customized AI for doctors. So that was something that we were very curious about. And later on, the Hurricane Maria happened. Basically, it became impossible to reach doctors in the island because a lot of doctors have to leave the island. Office staff left the island, so a lot of patients were looking for new doctors. So yeah, there was a big scramble in the country, and that was where we said, okay, let's just focus on doctors because it's an important problem, and that's what we did.
How did you meet your co-founder and decide to work with him?
Yeah, Israel. I met Israel. I think like 4, 5 years ago. So as part of as I mentioned in initially in the podcast, I was very passionate about solving brain drain. It was something that I was thinking about a lot in the university. So I created this group called Idea Platform, which is basically a student club that is looking to promote entrepreneurship and technology, tech entrepreneurship in particular, and just exposing people to that option. I remember that I founded this group and we started to grow a lot. Eventually, it was like 200 of us. We got sponsors from really awesome tech companies that wanted to help our mission. And at one point, I did it. I knew that I wasn't as a I didn't know a lot about software development, so I needed a rock star to mentor more people about how to build software. And I was looking for somebody, and everybody pointed towards Israel, like professors. Everybody was talking about Israel. So I interviewed Israel for Idea Platform, and he basically rocked it. And from that point, he became a very important tutor of coding, and he built the most important software projects in the student club. So later on, I got to work with him in Gifty, which is a startup founded by a Puerto Rican in Silicon Valley, and we work as software developers there. So it's just a relationship that we've worked together. We know each other. We're very passionate about entrepreneurship, and we became very, very passionate about artificial intelligence, and in particular doctors, because my mom is a nurse, Israel's mom is a receptionist. So everything aligned for us to work together. And yeah, today we're co-founders working on this, and basically the most important project of our lives.
When I first met you at Parallel 18, one of the most impressive things about you was that you were able to bootstrap the business with just the small $40,000 grant. Can you walk me through how you did that?
Yeah, sure. First of all, the support of Parallel 18 was crucial. It was very important. It's in my opinion, it's if it's not the most important program, it's one of the most impactful programs in the country, in Puerto Rico. We definitely, when we were accepted in Parallel 18, we were very early. We didn't we didn't have a clear idea of who was our customer segment or target customer. So Parallel 18 was very important, not only in helping us focus, but also survive as a company, as a humans, and survive here at Kimaria. So Parallel 18 is a big, like a big part of what we are today. I think that how we grew a lot is by not being afraid to sell. Even though Israel and I are the co-founders of Brainhi, there are two other team members that were part of that beginning, which is Diana, who is a customer service person, and Rodrigo, who is a salesperson. Rodrigo, in particular, basically found a way to build great rapport with doctor offices, and I can talk a little bit more about that because I think that the first day that Rodrigo, so we were selling and we were trying to reach doctors, but basically, and Rodrigo was basically helping us in just some technical details. But he was also always telling me, I want to help you with sales. I want to do sales. Like, this is a very important problem. So he was very passionate about solving that problem. So the first day that I told him like, yeah, okay, do what you think is best. He came to the office with a t-shirt, a jeans, and just tennis shoes. And I was like, yo, are you crazy? Do you really think you're gonna sell to doctors like that? Just a t-shirt that said Hurricane Strong, like a very, very nerdy entrepreneur. So eventually it worked. It worked selling like an entrepreneur, not selling as a salesperson. It worked really well. And I think that's one of the most important parts of our success, in addition to having a great customer success culture in Brainhi. Basically, because stickiness of our customers is great.
So you had one sales guy dressed in a Parallel 18 Hurricane Strong shirt going out and selling. But what other things did you do to get, say, your first 10 clients and then your first 30 clients?
Yeah, I think that something that happened organically, but now that we're opening the US market, we figured out is that organically we found innovators within the doctor offices. In the adoption where you get the 2.5 of innovators, and there's a mass, the bell curve. So organically in Puerto Rico, our first 10 customers, I would say, are innovators. Were people that part of that 2.5% of the market. And so that worked really well because now the problem, and this is something that was spoken by in Y Combinator, now the problem is way more simple. The problem wasn't to reach everyone, was to find that group of innovators and then figure out how to jump into the mass. So our first customers, we found them by focusing on the innovators. And every startup can figure out the attributes of an innovator within their customer segment. In our case, our first customer was Dr. David Bernier. He was a candidate for governor in Puerto Rico. So he's a very particular dentist. We also got presidents of associations of doctors. We got doctors that were very active on Facebook. So we got a lot of doctors that were not part of the mass. In other words, innovators or early adopters, but really innovators. I think that focus was very important because eventually what happened was that those doctors stuck to each other, and there was a big snowball effect there.
You mentioned Parallel 18 being one of the most important things that happened to the company. Why should entrepreneurs that are not from Puerto Rico think about doing the Parallel 18 program?
Sure. Yeah, I think that I've been part of multiple acceleration programs, and the awesome thing about Parallel 18 is that it has the best curriculum and the best structure for startups or entrepreneurs that really need that are, for example, engineers or are building really awesome stuff. That level of structure, it's really important. So the mentors, for example, I met you during Parallel 18, so the quality of mentors and the curriculum itself is very important in my opinion. That was something interesting. There are other advantages that I know Parallel 18 could describe way better than me. But for example, for Latino companies, they can come to Puerto Rico, which is sort of a bridge to the US if they're looking to open the US market. So there are many advantages. But from my perspective, in particular, in my case, that was very early as a startup. I got a lot of structure. I got a lot of learnings about fundraising, how to work with mentors, sales, cost, everything, really everything. The curriculum is really powerful.
If anyone wants to hear more about Parallel 18, you can listen to the episode with Seba Vial, who's the executive director of the program. So check that out. I'll put it in the show notes. So one of the things that made me really interested in investing in you guys in the first place, beyond the growth, was a story that Seba told me about. You guys in the team were growing, and then the hurricane hits. What happened next?
So yeah, the hurricane. The hurricane was a life-changing experience for every Puerto Rican in and out Puerto Rico. Still today, if you're in a bank in Puerto Rico and you're talking with a stranger, you'll talk about weather and the hurricane. So it's a very important topic in the island. Still, and it will be for this decade, really. So it was very important to us. So we were not prepared at all to that a massive hurricane. And what happened in Brainhi was that, for example, Israel, my co-founder, he's originally from Comerillo. Comerillo it was the second most affected town during the hurricane. So during that time, first of all, during the first week after the hurricane, I didn't know if Israel was alive. Like I didn't know. I didn't have a way to talk with him. So I didn't know if Rodrigo, the part of the sales team, was alive. So I was really, that was the first problem that we have to face. Is, are we alive? Are we? Can we continue with this? And so it was really a very stressful time. However, we it was just, we used that opportunity to just go at it. Work double, like outwork everybody. A good example is that. So I didn't know about I wasn't able to communicate with Rodrigo for a week. So he's originally from the north, also Puerto Rico. So he's like maybe 20 minutes away from my parents' home. So there was no cell phone. There was no cell phone signal. So I don't know how he got to my parents' home, but he left me a letter that said, later on, like a few days later, that when I saw my parents, it said something. I read it and it said something like, "Hey Emma, I'm alive, and I have a few ideas to sell to doctors." So that was really the attitude of the team. So yeah, as soon as like maybe 1 week after, we were already working on Brainhi and talking with doctors as we could, because we knew that we could help there. So we found internet everywhere. We were in the streets working together, whatever we could do, because we knew we had a window of opportunity with doctors. or we didn't exactly knew, but we sort of knew that there was a good opportunity there. So we just decided to work, and it definitely paid off.
It's an amazing story. Thanks for sharing it. And so as you finish Parallel 18, you're thinking about raising some money,
Hmm.
and you're thinking about doing an accelerator.
Yeah.
How did you decide to raise money, and how much did you raise?
The pre-seed we raised $100,000. Yeah, and we it was a friends and family, really, people like Puerto Ricans that have some that had an exit, help invested in Brainhi. For example, Miguel Rios, who is he's not an entrepreneur per se, but he's the head of data or analytics in Twitter. Who you were more of a mentor and with Sebastian and became an investor. Edward, so yeah, we got just friends and family to help us out and invest in us. And the reason why we decided to get extra investment is that we already knew how to sell in Puerto Rico. It was just a matter of being faster, and we couldn't do that without that extra help, that extra money. So it was all about just we already had a script, we already knew how to do it. We just needed more people to join us, and yeah.
So you were the first Puerto Rican company to get into Y Combinator. Tell me about that process and what it was like.
Yeah, Y Combinator. So we after in parallel that in simultaneously where we were when we were raising that small round, we were applying to Y Combinator, and I really didn't think that that we could get in. I'm very positive about Brainhi itself, and I know that we're gonna be the first unicorn that comes out of Puerto Rico. But just why coming I just didn't know because nobody from Puerto Rico could have the opportunity to get in, and I think that less than 20 Latino companies have been able to do that. So yeah, it was we didn't know, but we decided to go through the process, and I spent 3 weeks preparing for that interview. And I think that that was the important part, that we were able to go through the process, me and Israel go through the process of thinking actually what's Brainhi, more importantly, talking the way that successful entrepreneurs talk, which is just describe Brain as simple startup, just simple terms. That was a very important thing. I actually thought about as an engineer, I'm instructed to talk, in a very complicated way. So the process of applying to Y Combinator was very important because it forced us to simplify Brainhi into something that everybody could get quickly. And that was something that Y Combinator gave us even during the application process. The other thing that we learned is that through that process of 3 weeks, it's not only about the script and what you're going to say, it's about you and your co-founder really working together on getting more confidence on each other. Since, for example, in my case, I tend to be the one that talks the most. Israel, as the CTO, he's happy just coding. However, in there was a very important shift in our preparation, and was a conversation between me and Israel, where I asked him to talk more, and I asked him to participate with me in the interview. And I know that was a very important part of the interview because it really gave light to the relationship that we actually have, which is a 50-50 relationship in this startup.
What other advice would you give to founders for the interview itself?
Yeah, I think that practicing a lot. It's just about practice. And I would say that the other thing is that try to do as much mock interviews as you can. Find people from your same country. For example, if you're from Mexico, whatever, Colombia, you can find other startups from your country that more than sure will help you make make a mock interview with you, because it's a very particular interview. It's a 10-minute interview, which is it goes really fast. So you need to prepare for that interview also. So in addition to practicing, having confidence in your co-founders to talk and look fluid when pitching Brainhi, and sorry, not Brainhi, but your startup, and simplifying your startup concepts. Those would be the three things that I would recommend.
And do you remember what you were doing and what it felt like when you found out that you actually got in?
It felt like the world exploded. We were in, I remember, yeah, we went there, and there's a lot of Puerto Ricans in San Francisco that already knew about us, and we they were really excited about us and good friends in San Francisco. So the very stressful thing about Y Combinator is that you get interviewed in the morning, and they tell you like, we're gonna call you in the afternoon if you get in. If not, you get an email like with the reason of why not. So we were interviewed. In our case, we didn't have a lot of pushback from the interviewers. Like usually, there's a lot of startups that say that they have like a very bad experience when getting interviewed. In our case, it was really a very pleasant conversation. Just we got good feedback, but yeah, it wasn't a very it was a good conversation overall. But we didn't know if it was because they didn't get it, they didn't care about it, or if it's because we did really well. So we were like, we either bombed or we rocked it. So we didn't know. Then we stayed like 6 hours, very stressed. I was Me particularly. Israel is a little bit more relaxed, but I was very stressed out. I was like, so yeah, we were. I went to a restaurant, actually a bar with all the Puerto Ricans that were basically there to support us because they knew I was going crazy. I did, So they told me that they were going to call us between 5 to 6 p.m. They called me at 5:56. So I was like, I was the whole hour like, I was, yeah, I was very frustrated and scared, and everybody was there because of that. And actually, the Brainhi team was in a meeting, or they made like a small party in my apartment. They were like everybody was waiting for the call, so the pressure of that. You could imagine, So at 5:56, I got the call. I remember Tim, who is one of my mentors, telling me. He told me, "Hey, we really love you guys." But then there was a big silence, and I was like, "Tim, are you really calling me to say no? You should have sent me an email. I'm gonna cry here." I was thinking that, and then he told me, "And we would love for you to join Y Combinator." Then he talked about 10 minutes about all the instructions. I don't remember. I didn't hear him. I was like, I think so, and yeah, everybody was like screaming as good Puerto Ricans in the bar.
That's an awesome story. So now that you got in, what's the best way to take advantage of the program?
Yeah, you need to get a lot of office hours with people. Like I got to talk with everyone in Y Combinator, like Michael Seibel, and yeah, they're there. They're not gonna tell you what to do or how to do it. They're gonna answer your questions. So you just need to ask a lot of questions and make sure that you get and make sure that you extract value from it, because it's not as structured as for example, parallel team. It's more of a one day, one night at a week meeting, big meeting, and that's it. So you need to make sure that you access the network, you ask questions, and you're in you're focused on the program, you're and on the goals of the program.
What did you wish you knew before one applying for the program and then doing the program?
I think that talking a little bit more about investors, I think that I wish I knew, being from Puerto Rico was a question mark in from investors, from the investor side. Being based in Puerto Rico and having grown in Puerto Rico was a red flag, or a question mark, really. And I wish that, because the more I learned how to handle, actually, the more I discovered the advantages of Puerto Rico as I pitched investors, the better the conversations got, and that's how we were able to meet the round goal, just by improving the way that we communicate, where we at, and the advantages of our country, and really being flexible also with how we're gonna grow Brainhi eventually, because I know that maybe in the future Brainhi will be a global company, and that's something that is okay, and just understanding that and being okay with that and communicating that effectively to investors. I wish that I knew initially the importance of that.
When you were doing sales in the Bay Area, you had to go out and do similar things to what you did in Puerto Rico to hustle and make sales.
Yeah.
What kind of feedback did you get to that technique in the Bay Area?
It was different. It was different. It was way different. Yeah. So it was different. What can I say? Yeah, I walked around across the city. Actually, Rodrigo also went to San Francisco for a few weeks or days. So yeah, we walked across San Francisco, pitching the same way that we did in Puerto Rico. The difference is that in Puerto Rico they get about two, maybe one or two, I would say up to five pitches a week. That's they in San Francisco they get like five pitches per day in the offices, So they're more saturated. They're not another technology company, That's sort of the attitude. So it's harder to just be heard, even though we knew we had a unique value proposition and things like that. So we learned that what worked in Puerto Rico, for example, just highlighting where we come from, like we're students from the University of Puerto Rico. That was very important for Puerto Rico. We learned the importance of, just finding another script, another way to build rapport with doctors in San Francisco and in the US. So yeah, that was a feedback, and definitely more rough in San Francisco in terms of how they treat salespeople and things like that. But on the other side, I think that our happiest customers now are in the US. They are able to extract so much value from the artificial intelligence. They have in general, a better understanding of the capabilities, because they were way more tech savvy. So yeah.
If you could go back to right before you started Brainhi, knowing what you know today, what advice would you give yourself?
What advice would I give myself if I was starting out? I would say that I am me, Emmanuel, as the CEO. I am the biggest bottleneck of Brainhi. The CEO is the biggest bottleneck of a startup. Is if I become the best CEO of the world, Brainhi is gonna be one of the top-notch companies. So I think that embracing that from the beginning, and really in particular, making sure that as a CEO, I get out of my comfort zone continuously. Because if I personally, as a CEO, I am the biggest obstacle for growth in Brainhi. In the same way, if I personally get out of my comfort zone continuously and challenge myself as a human, I know that will create good impact for Brainhi. So and really, that's something that's my motto. That's something that I think about. I think that applies to all of the employees in Brainhi, and it's something that we discuss continuously. But I live about that. I live thinking about that. How many times did I get out of my comfort zone today? Because if you face those fears, there's good things at the other side. So just making sure that I'm out of my comfort zone continuously, it would be the first thing that I would do from if I had to do it again.
So one way to get out of your comfort zone is to expose yourself to new ideas. So are there any books, blogs, podcasts, documentaries that you really like or like to recommend to people?
So some recommendation I would give to people for great content. I would say that content that comes from YCombinator in general is really good. Particular their YCombinator YouTube channel. Paul Graham, it's really awesome. All the blogs are really the foundation of what we are building in Brainhi. Now, we use this awesome software called Closer.io, which is a CRM for salespeople. And the content they have is amazing. They are YCombinator startup. Also, Stelly is the founder, and he is really awesome. He's a specialist on inside sales. It's really awesome content for everybody that is doing sales.
And what's next for you and for Brainhi?
So currently we focus the whole team on selling to the US. We found that we already know how to sell in Puerto Rico, and eventually we plan to come back to Puerto Rico because there's still potential here, a lot of potential actually. But the most important problem to be the massive company that we know that we can be is to focus on selling in the US. We already have started to get good traction in the US by focusing only in the US. There's a few things that we need to still learn, how to pitch correctly, and just it really is like in some ways like starting from scratch, selling in a different territory. So we're learning about that. However, we're doing that with a team of 5 salespeople that already were ramp up in Puerto Rico. So they know Brainhi, the ins and outs. They're just learning how to the right pitch. It's like starting Brainhi again, but already with a 1 year of knowledge of what customers want and just the ability to pitch and sell in general.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to watch you guys continue to grow, and thanks again for taking the time to do this. It was awesome.
Thank you so much, Nate. Thank you so much. Excited to listen to the finalized version.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of Crossing Borders. If you want more information about Parallel 18, please listen to episode 14 with Sebastian Vidal or episode 44 with Lauren Casio from Abartis Health on iTunes or searching on nathanlustig.com. If you like Emmanuel's story, please share it on social media or give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher. Be sure to stay up to date with Latin America tech news by checking out latinlist.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great rest of your day.